Some stories begin with love. Others begin with war. But this one started with a contract, signed by a woman who understood she might not live to see the end of it. On a night when Seoul's elite gathered beneath glittering chandeliers, a mafia king watched his dead fiancée walk back into his world. 500 witnesses stood frozen, unsure if they were witnessing a miracle or the start of something far more dangerous. And beside him stood the woman he had married only weeks before, a stranger from another continent who saw what no one else could. The ghost wasn't real, but they were already too late. The danger absolutely was. And the war? It had already begun. What no one in that ballroom realized was that the quiet woman in crimson wasn't just a temporary bride meant to stabilize a fragile empire. She was something far more dangerous, an architect trained to notice flaws hidden beneath perfection. While assassins made plans and syndicates plotted revenge, she was already reshaping the battlefield in ways no one could see. Because survival isn't always about fighting harder. Sometimes, it's about redesigning everything before it all collapses. This is the story of Kang Jae-won, feared as the Winter King, and Zuri Reynolds, the woman he bought to protect his throne, only to discover she would rewrite his fate. And before the night was over, one of them would lose everything. But neither expected to find a future. If you've ever believed people can change despite their past, stay with this story, because what happens next changes everything. The ballroom fell silent before anyone understood why. 500 of Seoul's most powerful figures stood still as the grand doors slowly opened, almost ceremonially, like the building itself was holding its breath. Then she walked in. Ivory lace followed behind her like something that refused to stay buried. Every detail matched the woman who had died 6 months earlier. The same posture, the same face, the same haunting elegance preserved in memory. For Kang Jae-won, time stopped. The air vanished from his lungs, because the woman walking toward him was supposed to be dead. Beside him, Zuri felt his hand fall away from her back. Not gently, not carefully, but like he had touched something that burned. The man known across Asia as the Winter King suddenly looked human, fragile, undone by something impossible. He whispered a name that sounded more like a prayer than a word. Su-ah. And in that moment, Zuri understood something terrifying. This wasn't meant to kill him. It was meant to break him. Someone in that room had already decided how this night would unfold. While the crowd stood frozen, she noticed something no one else did. A faint surgical scar beneath the lace near the woman's collarbone. A reconstruction mark. A lie, stitched into living flesh. High above, members of the Beck Syndicate leaned over the balcony, smiling like they were watching a performance. This wasn't chaos, it was theater, and Jae-won was the main act. But the real question wasn't who the woman was. It was how an architect from Atlanta had become the only person who could stop a mafia war. To understand that, everything had to go back to the beginning. Back to a funeral that smelled like lilies and betrayal. Grief changed Kang Jae-won long before war ever could. The scent of lilies stayed with him long after the chaos faded. 6 months earlier, that same suffocating fragrance filled the funeral hall where Seoul's most powerful figures gathered to mourn Su-ah. White flowers surrounded her portrait, carefully arranged to represent peace. To Jae-won, they meant failure. He stood beside the coffin, hearing words of sympathy that meant nothing. Every voice sounded distant, drowned out by the echo of gunshots replaying endlessly in his mind. Power had protected him from enemies, betrayal, and the law, but it hadn't protected her. Grief didn't come like a storm. It settled quietly, turning everything into silence. In the weeks that followed, he worked without stopping. Expansion accelerated. Rivals disappeared. Threats were erased before they could grow. To the outside world, it looked like strength. To those closest to him, it looked like something else. He wasn't moving forward. He was trapped, moving backward. And that's when everything began to crack. The council brought him back to the unfinished wedding hall, the place where everything had fallen apart. Chairs still sat where guests had fled. Bullet marks still scarred the marble despite repairs. They wanted him to remember. Or maybe they needed him to. The empire is unstable. He didn't sit. Profits increased 12%. Fear increased, another voice replied. Trust decreased. They weren't attacking him. They were warning him. A leader shaped by grief created uncertainty. And uncertainty invited enemies. You've withdrawn.
State your solution, he said. Marriage. The answer came instantly. To them, it was strategy. To him, it was necessity. You want symbolism, he said. I'll give you symbolism. They expected resistance. Instead, he agreed. Because marriage was no longer personal, it was functional. But he made one thing clear. No internal alliances. No political families. Connections created leverage, and leverage created risk. He wanted someone neutral, someone outside the system, someone who couldn't be used against him. The council hesitated, then agreed, and that decision changed everything. Weeks later, one name stood out. Zuri Reynolds, an architect from Atlanta. No criminal ties, no political influence, independent, and vulnerable because of family debt. To the council, she was perfect. To J1, she was safe. A stranger meant distance, and distance meant control. The contract was simple. 1 year. Financial compensation. Absolute discretion. No emotional expectations. Clean, predictable. But that assumption would be their first mistake. Atlanta moved differently, warmer, louder, alive. For Zuri, routine meant control, and control meant survival. Because buildings made sense, people didn't. She noticed the men the moment they walked in. Too calm, too prepared. They knew everything. Her name, her schedule, her father. That's when everything shifted. The conversation stayed quiet but heavy. Numbers replaced threats. Debt replaced denial. The amount wasn't overwhelming. It was impossible. Then came the offer. Marriage. 1 year. In exchange, everything disappears. Debt, gone. Protection, guaranteed. Freedom, secured. It sounded unreal. But their tone made one thing clear. This wasn't optional. Why me? She asked. Neutrality. Not chosen, not special, just safe. Her eyes found her father across the street, shaking, struggling. For the first time, Zuri hesitated. Refusing meant risking his life. Accepting meant losing control of hers. The pen hovered in her hand, heavy. Then, without another word, she signed. And everything changed. Soul didn't welcome gently. It asserted itself, sharp, controlled, precise. From the moment Zuri arrived, everything moved with intention. She was escorted through private exits into a convoy that erased the outside world before she could fully take it in. The city passed in fragments, neon lights, glass towers, blurred motion, until it slowly gave way to something quieter, tighter, more controlled. By the time the vehicle came to a stop, she understood. This wasn't a home. It was a fortress. Kang Jae-won was waiting. He didn't stand when she entered. He simply watched, still, focused, measuring. Nothing about him felt accidental. You agreed quickly, she said. So did you, he replied. His voice was calm, even. No warmth, but no hostility either. I assume you understand this is strategic, he added. I assumed nothing else. He gestured toward the city behind him. My world runs on order. You'll have protection, resources, and freedom within limits. And if I cross those limits, you won't. Not arrogance, certainty. Zuri didn't react emotionally. She studied him. You rely too much on what you can see, she said quietly. That caught his attention. Explain. She did, clearly, directly. Entry points left unnoticed. Blind angles no one questioned. Small details that didn't seem important until they were. Most people approached him with fear. She approached him with clarity. And for the first time in months, something shifted. 72 hours passed. The ceremony was quiet, minimal, controlled. She wore ivory, not for meaning, just necessity. He stood beside her, unmoved. The vows were short, the signatures final. No applause, no celebration, just completion. She expected nothing. Instead, she felt something she couldn't name. Weight. The kind that settles in slowly when you realize there's no turning back. As they stepped outside, security tightened. Something had changed, even if no one said it out loud. Later that night, everything broke. An explosion tore through the convoy. The sound didn't just echo, it ripped through the air, sharp and immediate. Gunfire followed, controlled, precise. This wasn't chaos, it was planned. Jaewon responded instantly. Orders came fast, clear, decisive. But Zuri didn't panic. She watched, the movement, the timing, the way everything unfolded. Then she saw it. "Turn left," she said. The driver hesitated. Jaewon looked at her. "Why?" "Construction site," she replied. "Too many angles, they lose sight of us." A brief pause, then, "Do it." The vehicle swerved sharply, disappearing into a maze of steel and unfinished concrete. Behind them, the attack lost rhythm, lost control. And just like that, it collapsed. Silence returned. But it didn't feel like safety. It felt like something waiting. Back at the estate, one truth became clear. This wasn't random, it was planned. Reports came in quickly, fragmented, urgent, overlapping. Voices filled the room, each trying to make sense of what had just happened. But one voice didn't rush to be heard. It didn't compete. "Route data confirms external interception," Han said calmly. The room shifted, not because he was loud, but because he didn't need to be. He didn't react to the chaos, he organized it. While others focused on the attack, his attention stayed elsewhere. Not the damage, not the fear, but how it happened. "They adjusted quickly," he added. Not impressed, not concerned, just observing. The security chief stepped forward. She was a woman in her 40s with a sharp, no-nonsense demeanor. "Whoever planned this knew our routes. They hit the exact point where support vehicles are most exposed. That's not luck, that's intelligence." Zuri noticed something about Han. Not what he said, but what he didn't. He wasn't asking questions, he already had answers. Something about that stayed with her. Zuri started going through everything. Routes, logs, timelines. She didn't jump to conclusions. She followed it slowly, piece by piece. And the deeper she looked, the less it felt like a mistake, and the more it felt intentional. Routes weren't just exposed, they were anticipated, prepared for. She leaned back, staring at the data longer than necessary. "This isn't a leak," she said quietly. Jaewon looked at her. "Explain. A leak reacts. This didn't react. Someone set this up." Silence settled between them. Because that meant something far worse than betrayal. It meant planning, from the beginning. She pulled up archived data, old logs, buried details. Her eyes moved quickly, then stopped. On the screen, a log entry, time-stamped, a secondary access point. The clearance code didn't match any active personnel. She leaned closer. Every inconsistency, every failure led back to one place. Strategic development. One name, Director Han. She turned the screen toward Chaewon. All the failures lead through one department, strategic development. Chaewon's expression changed. Recognition, history. "He built this organization with my father. He built me." Zuri pointed to the log entry. "Then he knows exactly where the cracks are. But there's something else here." She highlighted a second access signature, fainter, buried deeper, almost invisible. "This doesn't match Han's pattern. The clearance protocol is different, older, higher." Chaewon studied it. "Someone else was there. Someone who didn't want to be seen," Zuri replied. This wasn't just Han's plan. He may have been following someone else's design. They didn't confront Han. Not yet. They watched. Because if he believed he was still hidden, he would make a mistake. And he did. Small things at first. Signals that didn't match. Timing that felt too precise. This wasn't someone slipping through cracks. This was someone who knew exactly where those cracks were. Everything pointed forward, to one place. The ballroom. A public event, a perfect stage. The night arrived. The ballroom glittered. Guests filled the space. Chaewon stood composed, controlled, the Winter King. But Zuri saw it. The tension, the weight, the past pressing in. "You don't have to go," she said quietly. "Yes," he replied. "I do." Avoiding it meant weakness, and he wouldn't give that to anyone. They entered. Eyes followed. Whispers moved. Zuri didn't react. She scanned. Entrances, exits, movement. Everything felt normal. Too normal. Minutes passed. Music played. Conversations resumed. People relaxed. And then it happened. The doors opened. Silence spread instantly. A woman stepped inside. Ivory lace, measured steps. The crowd stared. Disbelief, confusion, hope. Chaewon didn't move. For a moment, he wasn't the Winter King. He was just a man looking at someone he had buried. "Su-ah," he whispered. The woman's expression softened. Perfect. Too perfect. Cameras appeared, recording everything. This wasn't private, it was performance. Zuri watched. Movement, timing, behavior. Something didn't align. She looked up. The balcony. Han. Watching. Calm. Satisfied. Zuri stepped forward. "You recovered quickly," she said. The woman turned, smiled. "Yes, I did." "Then you won't mind explaining something." The room shifted. Attention moved to Zuri. The injuries reported 6 months ago would require reconstruction. You walk exactly the same. That's not how recovery works. A flicker. The woman's composure cracked. Zuri took one more step, her voice steady. "You're not Su-ah." Gasps, shouting, movement. The illusion shattered. The woman's expression hardened, performance over. Lights flickered, alarms triggered. Chaewon turned sharply. "Han!" He was gone. The truth came later. On a quiet road by the river, Han didn't deny it. He didn't hesitate. He didn't try to escape. He simply waited. "You came," he said. "This ends tonight," Chaewon replied. Han smiled faintly. "It already has." His gaze shifted to Zuri. "You changed faster than I expected. Attachment usually weakens people." "She isn't weakness," Chaewon said. Han tilted his head. "You believe that because you want to, but people like us don't get redemption." Chaewon stepped forward. "You taught me how to survive." "I taught you how to win," Han replied calmly. "And winning requires understanding loss." A pause. The air changed. "You were becoming weak, attached. So I removed the weakness." Chaewon's control cracked. "What did you say?" "Sua wasn't supposed to die instantly, but she did. I rerouted security. I delayed response time. I created the gap." His voice was calm, clinical. "You failed to protect her, but I made sure you would." Chaewon moved, fast, precise. His hand locked onto Han's collar, forcing him back. "For months I thought I failed her, but you made sure I would." Han didn't resist. He simply watched. "Now you understand." A memory surfaced. Not a full scene, a fragment. A younger Chaewon, perhaps 17. A training room. He had been knocked down. Han stood over him, extending a hand, not to comfort, but to pull him up. "Get up. Pain is information. Use it." Chaewon took the hand. Han's grip was firm. There was something in his eyes, not cruelty, something almost like care. Twisted, but real, present. Chaewon's grip tightened. Then, something changed. He released Han, stepped back. "No, now I see you." His voice steadied. "You didn't make me stronger. You made yourself necessary, and now you're not." Han studied him, searching for anger, for weakness, for control. He found none. That's it? No retaliation? You don't get to define strength anymore. You took something from me, but you don't get anything else. For the first time, Han's composure shifted. Not fear, recognition, almost respect. You chose differently than I did. He turned, walked away. The night swallowed him. It should have ended there, but it didn't. Back at the estate, Zuri stood alone in the strategy room. Screens dimmed, systems quiet. She pulled up the log again, the second signature, buried deep, untouched. She traced it. The clearance code, older than Han's, higher than his. It led nowhere, a dead end. Han didn't start this, she realized. He only continued it. Someone else had been there that night. Someone who didn't make mistakes. Someone who never revealed themselves. The war hadn't ended. It had only changed hands. Dawn began to rise, light slowly replacing shadow. Chaewon stood at the edge of the terrace looking at the river. Zuri joined him. For the first time, he said quietly, I don't know what comes next. Then we build it. He looked at her, not trust yet, but something close. There's something else, she said. From that night, another signature. Someone else was there. His expression hardened. You're sure? I'm sure. Silence. Then we find them. She nodded. They stood together as the sun rose over the city. The war hadn't ended. It had only changed hands. And this time, they wouldn't see it coming. If the man behind everything is still out there, then tell me, was this ever really Chaewon's war? Or was he just part of someone else's design?